Peace is one of those words that rolls so easily off the tongue, and yet most people have never tasted it. They imagine peace as a destination, a prize at the end of a long struggle, something to be achieved when the noise stops and the world behaves. But have you noticed, the more you chase it, the further it recedes, like trying to catch your own shadow. We treat peace as though it were hidden somewhere beyond the horizon. We say, when the war ends, when the bills are paid, when I fix myself, then I'll be at peace. But the trouble is that horizon moves with you. Each step toward it makes it shift another step away. You see, the very act of seeking peace is a kind of violence. It divides the present into what is and what should be, and in that division, the conflict begins. The mind says, I must be different from what I am. That tension between the seeker and the sought is the birthplace of all unrest. To see this clearly, imagine water in a pond. When the surface is agitated, you cannot see the reflection of the moon. You might think, if only I could force the water to be still. So you press it flat with your hands. But the harder you press, the more ripples you make. Stillness cannot be commanded. It appears when the pressure stops. So the great irony is that every attempt to make peace destroys it. Peace is not a goal, it is a recognition. When you understand this, the whole meaning of life's struggle changes. Peace isn't the opposite of war or conflict. It's the space in which even conflict happens. Just as silence holds the sound, peace holds the storm. You can experience this directly. Sit quietly and listen not to your thoughts, but to the silence beneath them. Thoughts rise and fall like waves, yet beneath them, the ocean remains calm. That calm is what you truly are. Most people imagine peace as a frozen, motionless state. They think it means the absence of feeling or the end of passion. But real peace is alive. It's like the quiet rhythm of the heart. It moves, it breathes, it pulses with life. It is not dullness. It is the very intensity of presence. A man once asked me, how can I live in peace when the world is burning? And I told him, the world has always been burning. But within you burns another fire, the fire of awareness that is never consumed. Peace is not the world behaving itself. It is the knowing that even chaos arises within the same harmony as the stars. Look at a forest after a storm. Branches are broken, leaves scattered, and yet somehow the whole scene is perfect. The chaos is part of its order. The same is true for you. You are not a mistake in need of correction. You are a pattern in the grand movement of existence. We have been taught that life is a ladder, and peace sits at the top rung. But ladders are for climbing, and climbing never ends. So long as you think of peace as something to be earned, you remain in conflict with the present moment. There is no way to peace, because peace is not somewhere else. The way and the goal are the same. The path is the destination. When you walk, you do not walk to get to the step ahead. Each step is the journey itself. In the same way, each moment of awareness is peace. If you are not trying to make it something else, consider your breath. You don't force it. You don't say, I must inhale correctly. You simply allow it, and in that allowing, life happens effortlessly. Peace is like that. It is the natural state when you stop interfering. So the practice, if one can even call it a practice, is the art of noticing. Noticing how the mind runs, how it chases and resists, and seeing that all of it arises within a greater stillness that never moves. The problem is not that peace is absent, but that the noise of wanting covers it. When you tire of chasing, when you are still enough to notice the hum of being itself, you realize peace was never lost. It was only ignored. The essence of all this is very simple. The more you fight for peace, the more you confirm the belief that peace is not here. But when you stop fighting, when you let things be, the heart opens, and there it is. That is why peace cannot be achieved by force or by moral effort. It blooms naturally when the war within ends, when you give up trying to control life and allow it to unfold. You don't make the sunrise by pulling it up with ropes. You simply wake up and watch it happen. peace is the same. To see this truth is to be free of the endless search. You no longer live for some future harmony. You live as harmony now. We have been conditioned to believe that peace is something fragile, something that can be broken by noise, conflict, or uncertainty. But true peace cannot be broken. It is not a delicate flower to be protected. It is the ground itself upon which all things grow. The storms may come and go, but the earth beneath does not tremble in fear of the rain. When I speak of peace, I'm not talking about a world without problems. I'm pointing toward a state of being that exists even in the midst of them, a stillness that remains untouched even as the surface ripples. Think of the ocean again. On the surface, the waves rise and fall, sometimes gentle, sometimes fierce. But deep below, the ocean is always unmoved, always silent. You are that depth. The noise of your thoughts, the waves of your emotions. They are real, yes, but they are not all that you are. Beneath them, something vast remains calm. The tragedy of human life is not suffering itself, but our misunderstanding of it. We believe that suffering is an error, that it should not be there. But the attempt to banish suffering, to exile pain, is the very act that breeds more of it. The moment you say, "This should not be," you begin to fight with reality, and that fight is the suffering. Peace, then, is not the absence of pain, but the absence of resistance to pain. When you see this, life begins to soften. You start to understand that everything you've been running from, fear, uncertainty, loneliness, is not an enemy, but a teacher. The moment you allow them to exist, they lose their teeth. The dragon turns to smoke. People speak of inner peace, as if it were something you could capture and keep, like a treasure locked away in a chest. But the instant you try to hold it, it slips through your fingers. For peace does not belong to the one who grasps. It belongs to the one who lets go. To live in peace is to live without the constant itch to fix, to change, to improve the present moment. Not because you are indifferent, but because you finally see that the moment is already whole. Imagine standing by a river. The current flows without your effort. You may reach into it, try to grab a handful of water, but you cannot hold it without losing it. Yet when you open your hand, the river touches you completely. That is peace. Not the holding, but the touching. Now, this realization does not make you passive. It does not mean you sit idly while the world burns. On the contrary, it gives rise to the only kind of action that has real meaning. Action born from understanding, not from fear. When you act from peace, your actions are not reactions. They are expressions of clarity. You move, you speak, you create, not because you are trying to fix the world, but because you are dancing with it. Peace is the way because it is the only state from which wisdom can flow. When the mind is restless, it cannot see clearly, but when it rests, it sees everything as it truly is, interconnected, unfolding, alive. You see, every time you divide the world into this and that, right and wrong, good and evil, you create the very conflict you wish to end. Reality itself does not divide. It simply is. Like a river flowing around rocks, it makes no judgments. It moves with ease. So peace begins when you stop dividing yourself from life, when you no longer stand apart as the observer, trying to manage the show, but realize you are the show itself, the music, not the listener. Let us take another look at this word, way. When I say there is no way to peace, I mean that the very notion of a way implies time, distance, progression, a journey from here to there. But peace does not lie at the end of time. It is only ever now. When you realize that, every moment becomes sacred. Even washing the dishes can be peace. The sound of the water, the warmth on your hands, the rhythm of motion, all of it is life, expressing itself without tension. The world is not waiting for peace. The world is peace, misunderstood. Even conflict has its rhythm. Night fights with day, and yet together they make the dance of time. Life and death, joy and sorrow, they do not oppose each other, they define each other. Peace is that understanding which embraces both without preference. And when you begin to see life this way, your search ends. The restless movement of seeking gives way to a still joy, a laughter without cause. You realize that what you were trying to reach was never far away. It was always you, before the effort, before the thought, before the name. So peace is not found through effort, nor through withdrawal. It is discovered in the simple act of being what you already are. When you stop striving to become peaceful, you notice something miraculous. You already are. The silence beneath thought, the stillness beneath motion, the awareness beneath identity, that is it. Peace is the way because it is not something separate from the journey. It is the walking, the breathing, the seeing, the very act of being alive. If you wait for the world to be quiet before you rest, you will never rest. But if you rest within the noise, you discover the quiet was always there.